must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Good evening, viewers. Welcome to Punchline Africa TV, broadcasting from Nairobi, the Republic of Kenya. Viewers, wherever you are in the world, in Africa, thank you very much for your patronage, for watching Punchline Africa TV. This is the African think tank on matters of politics, economy, social life, everything, culture. We discuss everything from here. This is a station that you love to see, to watch, enjoy, sit back and talk to us. Today, the show is MATSANGA Africa Perspective. In MATSANGA Africa Perspective, we are going to look at a very important subject on the continent of Africa. MATSANGA Africa Perspective is a show that brings out what Africa should do, what ails Africa, what fails our continent. Where is the Pan-Africanism gone? Where has patriotism gone? Every country in Africa has something wrong. Even in those countries that have the big economy, there is something wrong. There is something wrong. And this is exactly what has happened on the situation that we see. It has happened in Africa. There is always something very difficult on Africa. What has ailed Africa? What has killed Africa? How do we get Africa working? Do we have African Union? Is it working or not working? Is it time to review whether it is worth it or not worth it? Do we have a ceremonial officials that wait for a crisis to come? Then they come, they run around with briefcases. Is Africa working? Is this the African Nkrumah, Secretary, Amir Cabral, Nyerere, Jomo Kenyatta, Obote, Patrice Lumumba, Abdel Nasser, Samora Machel? Is it the Africa that they died for? Is it the Africa that we want? Everywhere, every corner of Africa, there is something wrong. I will not keep quiet until there is something good that comes out of my talk. Look at the countries in Africa. Nigeria, the biggest country on the continent with a population of about 200 million people. But it behaves as if it has no head, tail, a cocktail of disaster. The topic today. And if you want to engage us in this topic. Engage us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on Instagram. We are available. And for those viewers in Africa elsewhere, and in Europe, this show will be replayed quite in Europe on free-to-air and free to view decoders on channel 003 and 002, 003 of Nirosat satellite system that picks for us all the information that we want in the world in Berlin. Thank you very much, viewers. Let's start. My question this evening is, do we need elections? Does Africa need elections? Of course, a quick analysis of anybody jumping to the answer, to give me an answer, is going to say, yes, we need elections. Does really Africa need elections? Do we need them? Are elections worth? Are we mature enough? Are we mature enough to stand the test of time when it comes to elections? Are you capable in your country to campaign without killing the other, without beating your neighbor? How many countries in Africa that are doing so? Does Africa need these elections? That is my question today. Contribute to the subject, write to us, engage us, call us on the telephone numbers that are scrolling. I will answer some of the questions. You will also read all your comments at the end of the show. Does Africa need elections? Do we need elections in Africa? That's the question. This year alone, 10 African countries are undergoing elections. Brothers and sisters of the African continent, if you look at all the elections that have taken place this year, starting from the one in Nigeria, there is nothing that you live to be proud of. If you look at the 10 countries that are conducting elections, the election is in Nigeria, the election is in Comoros, election is in Madagascar. There was an election again in Maldives. There is an election taking place in another African country, Malawi. I would name the countries. There was an election in Democratic Republic of Congo. If you look at all these elections, can you say comfortably, yes, we need elections in Africa? I want to be very candid and straightforward. There was no election in Nigeria. There was a fuss. 84 million people in Nigeria registered to vote. Out of 84 million people in Nigeria who registered to vote as voters, only 28 million voted. Do you call that an election? Was that an election? Was that an election? Can Buhari confidently come out and tell people, I have the mandate of my people. The Nigerian people have given me the mandate. Out of 84 million registered voters captured by machines, only 28, 54 million stayed home, abandoned, threw out the cards, and said they are fed up. Does a country like Nigeria need elections? If elections are being stolen, if elections are being used to beat people, if people are being massacred, does Africa need elections? Every time in every year, 5 years, 4 years, there is death in Africa. My case, therefore, I present my case. Why do we have death? Why do we tell city mortuary attendants, the morticians, to be ready to extend space for Africans who are going to be butchered, killed, murdered because of an election? Does Africa need elections? Why do we prepare machetes, pangas, clubs, guns to kill opponents? Do we need an election in Africa? Before the election, we all go in the same bar, the same restaurant, the same house, we sleep together. But when we announce the word elections, there is always a problem. People start collecting pangas. People start collecting stones. People become tribalistic. The Fulani of northern Nigeria go back to their militaristic tendencies to oppress the Igbo of the south. The same happens to several tribes in Africa. If you look at the mess that has taken place, that took place in Nigeria, you cannot call that an election. That was a farce. Africa, does Africa need elections? Where is African Union? Let's come back to the current situation that we see in Sudan. And first of all, I would like, before you go to play the current situation in Sudan, I would like to play for you a clip. We have been looking for Dr. Riek Machar to come back to South Sudan. The confusion that is in Khartoum. We had to look for Dr. Riek Machar to find out why Dr. Riek Machar is not able to return to Juba. Let's play the clip. Play that clip of Dr. Riek Machar. I want my viewers to listen whether we need elections in Africa. Sudan, a peaceful country, South Sudan was a peaceful country after getting independence. What killed South Sudan? We talked of elections. Dr. Riek Machar said there must be democracy. Salva Kiir, since independence, has been a leader. He doesn't want to relinquish power. There should be constitutional reforms. It sparked a conflict that destroyed South Sudan. Today, South Sudan is the sick child of East Africa. Play the clip of Dr. Riek Machar. We found out where he is. And I remember I'm going to join with my correspondent, Mr. Ali Mukhtar, who is right now in Khartoum. After this, after the Riek clip, I will bring in Dr. Ali Mukhtar, right now from Khartoum, Punchline correspondent, who is overseeing, who is looking at events. He's in Sudan capital, Khartoum, and he has known exactly what is going on there. The situation in Sudan around, we had to look for Dr. Riek Machar. Bring it on.
The opposition-appointed governor of northern Bahr el-Ghazal state on Thursday urged regional powers to release Machar, who has been under detention in Khartoum. Early this month, the SPLM-IO admitted that Machar, who is designated to the first vice president position he once held, is under detention in the Sudanese capital Khartoum and was not allowed to move beyond it. This letter is in reference to appeal your true leadership to release Dr. Riek Machar Tenny-Durgan, the chairman and commander-in-chief of the SPLM/IO, who continues to remain confined even though the revitalized peace agreement, RRACS, was signed almost six months ago. Partly read the letter signed by SPLM-IO Governor of Northern Bahr El Ghazal, Mubarak Deng Tong. The letter seen by the Nyamilapedia appreciated and praised the release of Machar from a 2-year South African detention in May last year, which paved a way for his participation in the negotiation of the revitalized peace agreement, saying however that the return of Machar to house arrest he turned the initial positive steps of his release into serious disappointment, inasmuch as the members of the movement at home and abroad were expecting the chairman and commander-in-chief drive Riek Machar to embark on dissemination of the RRACS soon as the agreement is signed. As a governor of federal state of Northern Bahr El Ghazal, together with my constituents and the entire SPLM/IO family aspirations and expectations, I'm bound to write this letter to you with a sincere hope that Your Excellency will treat it as a true reflection of growing anxiety and frustration among the entire membership of the SPLM/IO, who continue to wonder why.
We looked for Dr. Riek Machar through our investigative journalism. He's not a free man to travel, to come, to go in, to return. How will this peace be held? Do we need elections? It all started with Dr. Riek Machar and Salva Kiir haggling over who should be the next leader of Sudan. Therefore, do we need elections? Let's move on. Let's bring another topic. Today in Khartoum from Saturday, things have not been very well. There is a regime change brought, funded, equipped, supplied, and controlled by external forces that came in through Chad, in N'Djamena, supplied by the French hegemony that delivered the NGOs with money to have an uprising to overthrow President Ali Bashir, General Bashir. That's another country on bloodshed, just on cliffhanger politics. Do we need elections if a country that has been peaceful, whether it is being ruled by a military, but a military has been giving himself to elections, resigned and became general without the uniforms, but he has been conducting elections? Do we need that? Is Sudan you see now? That's live from our correspondent, Dr. Ali Mukhtar, who is in one of the hotels. Those are young men, civilians. Now the army itself, the clip that you see, the army is defending the civilians against the state security and the Janjaweed operatives who are guarding the army headquarters and the palace of President Ali Bashir, General Bashir of Sudan. There is an uprising. There is a regime change similar to that took place in Algeria, in Algiers. So these are civilians. The people shooting at the army. The army now defending the civilians. And you can see the second clip, which we are sorry we don't want to show it, because the person has been shot and he's being taken by the army to the hospital because he has been shot. And you can see that clip. It shows this is exactly live now, coming all the way from the capital city, Khartoum. Does Africa need elections? How peaceful were we before these world elections came? Let's move on. The situation in Libya. Viewers, my brothers and sisters, the Libyan capital was one of the best. Benghazi, Tripoli, Misrata, Sirte, all these cities. I traveled in Libya It was like another Europe. Today, Libya is the begging basket of Africa. We have to send in medicines. People have turned into slavery to sell black Africans to the highest bidder, to put them on a plane to cross over, to die in the Mediterranean Sea. Libya is a heaven of terrorists. ISIS operatives, Al-Qaeda, Maghreb, sleeper cells became active, took over Libya, and after Sarkozy, France indicted Mr. Gaddafi. Gaddafi told us before he died that you are killing me. You are living terrorist and you want to kill me. The pictures you see there, these are Africans that have been loaded from Libya, trying to get a green pasture across in Europe. Does Africa need elections? When we still have this type of things happening, us being sold, being thrown on the stones, do we need elections? Some of these people leave their countries because of elections. Some of these people die in the Indian Ocean, in the Mediterranean Sea, because of the elections. Does Africa, every turmoil that comes, everything that works in Africa that causes a conflict has something to do with elections? The people of Kenya went to war almost in 2007 because of elections. In 2017, Kenya was not, after elections, the first nullification, people went to the streets. They wanted to destroy the entire city. It's because of elections. Does Africa need elections? I'm going to be very candid. For those who want to say we need election, we are democratic, are we ready for the elections? Country number one, you have heard what Nigeria is. Country number two, you have heard what Sudan is. You know what is happening in Khartoum. Country number three, Libya. As we speak, Khalifa Haftar, General Khalifa Haftar, is already crossed over towards Tripoli, and he wants to take over Tripoli. I want to move, ladies and gentlemen, our correspondent from Khartoum is calling, and he would like to brief us right live from Khartoum before we move to another subject. He's calling us. He would like to tell us what is happening right now in Khartoum. As you are aware, Khartoum is under siege. The city has been under siege since Saturday. The army has taken over. Our correspondent Ali Mukhtar, right from Khartoum. We are still waiting for you, sir. We are calling. He has just called, but we are waiting for our correspondent. Our correspondent from Khartoum, Mr. Ali Mukhtar, right from Khartoum City Live. I think you'll recall back, but let's move on. The situation in 10 countries in Africa looks volatile. The situation of, first of all, in Khartoum itself and other places where elections in Madagascar. You have already heard this morning we had a report saying that the Russians were used. Oh, our correspondent is here. Russians were used in rigging elections in Madagascar. And if these claims are correct, you expect another serious situation exploding in Khartoum, in Madagascar, in Antananarivo, the capital city of Madagascar. Elsewhere in Comoros, where an election was held and the opposition refused, opposition leader was arrested, detained. Do we need an election? Elsewhere in Maldives, Maldives is one of the African countries, if people didn't know, is an African state that is located near Africa and is one of the member states of African Union. An election was conducted and the people rejected that election. Do we need elections in Africa? Elsewhere, so many countries, Zimbabwe, an election was conducted. The High Court and the Supreme Court of the Republic of Zimbabwe told the world that there were no irregularities in that election. The leader of opposition, and I want to speak this with confidence, I know Mr. Max Manyika is listening. After a court, does Africa realize that after a Supreme Court of a country has nullified an election, we must take that as the last order, packing order of any country, and then you go back to an election? Oh. Thank you very much. Our Khartoum correspondent. Hello, sir.
Yes, how are you? How are you?
Good morning, Dr. Ali Mukhtar.
This is good evening.
Good evening, sorry, Dr. Ali Mukhtar. Viewers, we have a correspondent from Khartoum, yes. Dr. Ali Mukhtar, our punchline. Ali Mukhtar, our punchline correspondent from Khartoum. Good evening, sir.
The network, I'm not getting you.
Okay, let's see.
Well.
Are you getting me now?
Yeah, on the WhatsApp it will be okay. On the WhatsApp.
Okay. Let me go back to WhatsApp and call you instead of you calling me. Good. Stay tuned. We are looking for is our correspondent from Khartoum and is right in Khartoum. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Dr. Ali Mukhtar.
Yes, how are you?
Fine, thank you, sir. How is Khartoum? How is the situation right now, live in the Khartoum capital?
Yes, the situation is still tense, like what happened this afternoon when these security organs been instructed by the leadership and then the popular security that was controlling the areas where the residential areas where they are operating. So the backfire people, and then there have been a clash between the army and this security that loyal to President Bashir.
These clashes, earlier on we showed the clip that is live, that you have just sent us live from Khartoum. Was that a clash between the police and the army?
No, the army, the security and the army. Security and the army. Those who are allied, the national security and the army, who are loyal to Bashir, because they have been instructed by the Security Council, the Security Committee, headed by Bashir himself, that they have to scatter the demonstration. Those who have been gathering there for 3 nights now.
Is there any chance of people going back home, or the population is increasing?
The population is increasing, and the all opposition leaders came into the square where the demonstration are based, because many of them, they have even built the tents there. They have put the tents that they are not moving until Bashir has to resign. And there is, according to the sources inside, where we got the information from the control room inside, that there is problems of selecting the leaders, and that's why the army has not given the statement or declaring that they are taking over. But the opposition said, all of them, they said, we are happy for you, army, to take over. The all opposition leaders.
Opposition leaders,
Mahdi and others,
they have agreed that the army can take over.
All of them, they unite themselves and say army has to take over. And that's why you see, when these clashes happen, the army was wounded and some of them even has been killed.
Okay. In the terms of where you were, from the high building that where you were in the hotel, as you are preparing to return to back to us, and then you could not take your plane, from the position where you are, does this look like it's a coordinated, well-equipped, well-supplied demonstration?
It is well supplied. Even then other demonstrations happen in other nations, and this is the largest number of the demonstration ever since after the independence of Sudan, and this even after the remove of Nimeri in '95 in April the 6th. So this is the biggest one, and people have never seen it before. People have never seen it before.
From the hotel where you were, which is one of the biggest hotels in town, and you oversee the palace across, and then the army headquarters across. Have you seen any envoy from the African Union, or envoy from the European Union, or envoy from the United Nations trying to sort out this mess of Khartoum?
Yeah, from the region there was an envoy last week that was sent to Bashir, so that the Bashir has to hand over peacefully, and they offer him to go to certain country where he can be able to be there as asylum in that area. But he said he's going to respond after 2 weeks, and then before the 1 week finished, this is how now the demonstration went out on this 6th of April. So it brought all these things to himself. And what I want to analyze here, Bashir is not going to end up his leadership in a bad shape, which was not people were intending for him to leave the country. But this is what analysis, and the people are determined they will not leave. The children has even come out, and the young people who were born during Bashir regime time, and this is what is going to happen. So the game is over, as people are saying.
Okay, another very critical question that I want to ask you. We have shown a clip of Dr. Riek Machar. As you know, we are from East Africa, and we are very concerned about the security situation of South Sudan. We just shown a clip of Dr. Riek Machar, who seemed to have been detained in the capital city, Khartoum. Any whereabouts of where Dr. Riek Machar is?
Yeah, he's in the detention house arrest. That is what these people has. That was the part of the deal, bringing him back from South Africa and signing this agreement, which is not promising. And now the crises that are coming because Bashir himself was a master engineer of this agreement. And as Bashir is going to leave the leadership in any time from now, or that is going to be a bad shape for the grantor of peace. And because one of them is not going to be there, the same government, the same leadership that was behind the agreement are not going to be there anymore. There's a new leadership that's going to come up that will show another dimension, and then another era for Sudan. So they will deal first with their issues, and that the issue of South Sudan, I think people have to think twice what to happen. But he is still under the house arrest in detention, and that's why many leaders from the IO opposition are asking for him to be released.
Okay.
So that is one of the things.
Okay. Dr. Ali Mukhtar, one question. All these chaos that are in Khartoum, it is believed that it's a regime change sponsored by George Soros. Do you see any sign of external forces that have actually supplied, equipped, monetarily, giving people, where are people getting water? Who's supplying them the food? Who has paid for these demonstrators? Is there anything you as a senior analyst, security analyst around Africa and other places, do you see any format of any supply of external forces? Because it is believed that the people who are disrupting Khartoum all came from Jamena.
Yeah, Sudanese people, they are very generous when the things come to the matter of the nation. And that is why everybody was carrying water, everybody was carrying food, everybody was carrying, and then the business community, who are those who want the change, the economic situation. So these are the people who are doing it, and people have been supplying from different places. So it is internal thing, there's no external money from outside. So they have their own, and they are supporting because they stand for their position to see the regime change for the better Sudan to happen.
Last question before I leave you to, it is getting late, so that you get out of on top of the hotel where you were, you go back to your room. The last question, Dr. Ali Mukhtar, does Africa need elections? Do we need elections? Given that all these countries where, when you mention the word elections, each country starts preparing for dead bodies. Do we need elections?
Your voice is cutting, I'm not hearing you well, so can you repeat the question?
I am saying, does Africa need elections? Do we need elections in Africa?
Yes, because I've never tested the democracy. That's a big question, and that's a big issue for Africa, because until Africa has accepted the democracy of leadership, this is how the election will be a fair election. Because when we elect people always in Africa, sometimes they want to stay for long. Which games, and this is the things that are facing Africa. Have seen always making the election to benefit them, the parties that are ruling, or enriching parties so that they can be able to overcome the other parties, the minorities. So that is not called democracy. So Africa needs a lot of things to be done. Africa needs changes of mindset of how to conduct the election, the fair and all. Because even if the party is not a people only. The party is a ideology. So if people were thinking of supporting one party, that is like you're creating tribalism because it's end up with tribalism in Africa. And this is not the same way in the West.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali Mukhtar. We wish you good luck. Stay safe until the situation cools down, then you can be able to come out. Thank you very much. We hope to see you back in Nairobi anytime.
Updating you, Fines Line, we will be updating you. We will be updating you from time.
Thank you very much. God bless you. Keep yourself safe until you return to Nairobi.
Thank you. You're welcome.
That was our correspondent, Dr. Ali Mukhtar, all the way from Khartoum, the capital city of Sudan, where demonstrators have besieged the army headquarters, the palace of President Bashir, saying they want him to be out before they leave. Even when there was a curfew, they have not respected the curfew at all. We come back to our question of elections. We were talking about Madagascar, Comoros, Maldives. All these countries have got elections. Zimbabwe. I was on Zimbabwe and you saw exactly what was happening in Zimbabwe. The leader of opposition said no, he doesn't recognize the election results. He went to the streets, he called on people, he wants to occupy Harare up to now. Does Africa need elections? Malawi, several leaders of opposition have been detained, beaten, tortured. They are in jail, some of them as we speak. The friction in that small, tiny island, a country called Malawi, is so tense. The rate of stress that any human being can die of in Malawi is one of the worst rates that you can see. Do we need elections? Does Africa need elections? South Africa. South Africa has gone to elections. They will be going to election, their campaigns. And I think you can show some of the pictures that came from South Africa that are so bad that some of them are graphic. We wouldn't like to talk about, to show them. But there is tension in South Africa. This morning, an opinion poll was done around, around the leadership, whether ANC will gain 50%. It showed that they might not get 50% this time because some other parties seem to have eaten in. So the tension, the amount of tension that is around South Africa is so huge that you wouldn't like to see be in a place and talk of elections. How many voters are going to come out in South Africa to vote? There is the land issue. The moment they brought in elections, even the president became politicized. So elections in Africa trigger conflicts. Cameroon. The situation in Cameroon is even worse. All this is because people want independence. The independence that you see in Cameroon is very huge. It's needed. The Anglo-speaking and French-speaking people are in a fight. The Anglo-speaking want a state called Amazonia. The rest of the people would not like to speak with the Amazonians who have demanded for a state since 1961. A referendum, the United Nations General Assembly 1608. Last year, President Biya organized the elections, a fake election. He organized an election on himself, and he was elected, unopposed. Almost, he declared he stuffed the boxes. One country of the part of the country was boxes were left there. There was no election. He went further to arrest the leader of opposition, Mr. Kamto, who is right now in prison. As we speak now, people are ready. They are planning for a very big demonstration to come to Yaoundé. They want to fix Mr. Biya. Does Africa need elections? Mr. Biya has refused to relinquish power, and as a result, Mr. Biya has oppressed one section of his own people simply because they wanted freedom to talk. In Nigeria, which I've talked about, Buhari organized a fake election that killed thousands and thousands of people. That is not an election. That's a facade. And we need to make sure that some things can change, and they change for better if Africa is to remain a united Africa. Let's look at Senegal. Senegal seemed to be one of the stable countries, but still there was no stability prior to elections. Some leaders of opposition were detained. Some were barred from going to Senegal. In Dubai, in Doha, in other places, they were told not to return. Although that was done, the Senegalese had a free and a fair elections. They have now selected their own leader, and there is that smooth transition. It can only be said it is one of the few countries that has changed elections without much bloodshed. But behind the level ground is not the same. Still obstacles. When it comes to elections, everything in Africa still comes to a standstill. Egypt, General Eli Sisi. General Sisi is one of the generals who even changed the constitution to rule until 1937. If you have been hearing of leaders who have overstayed in power, look at the one of Egypt, the current chairman of the African Union, a man who is supposed to police the rest of African Union, to observe rule of law, rule of elections, constitutionalism. He has changed the constitution to suit him until 2037. I might not be here, but may God hold and help Egyptians. Tanzania. Elections in Tanzania during Nyerere times were conducted in a peaceful manner because there was one party state. President Nyerere, before he died, he accepted there is need for change. People need change. Maendeleo. In one of the speeches, Nyerere said people need change. If they need change, you allow them to have the change. Nyerere was so democratic that he allowed his own son to go and change and be in a party that he wanted. The gentleman we were with in Tanzania, his own son, he came to Kampala together with us. We used to be in Kampala in the 80s. He became another party member from his father's party. But Tanzania has maintained the peaceful change of the guard, change of guards without bloodshed. But the elections of 2016 did not spare Tanzania at all. The leader of opposition, Lowassa, had to run a bit to Kenya. take some days here before he decided now formally to return back home and return to CCM, Chama cha Mapinduzi. The opposition between the opposition party, Chadema, and Chama cha Mapinduzi have created that type of fight, the fight that can bring Africa, East Africa, to tension. If you look at what members of Chadema are saying about CCM, you might not think this is the Africa that Nyerere left. The good thing is that the Tanzanian constitution does not allow any contentious issue on presidential election. Whoever has won the highest votes in Tanzania for the president becomes the president without going to the Supreme Court to challenge. So where did we get these clauses in our constitution that election should be finally decided by the Supreme Court? Where did we get it? Uganda has one, Kenya has one, other countries in East Africa have those things. Congo, DRC, Congo has one. This is the tragedy of Africa. When you look at the elections in Tanzania, compare them with other elections elsewhere, you can say to the scale of 1 to 10, Tanzania takes about 9 because it prepares its election free and fair, and the Chama cha Mapinduzi wins, and then Chadema also wins, and they live together until a few of this time. There were a few fightings and chest bumpings that created quite a lot of confusion. Finally, in Kenya, before I move to my own country, whether we need elections, whether we are mature enough to tolerate each other when it comes to the question of elections. Kenya is one of the countries, the peaceful country, an island among the islands of insanity, we can call it. Insecurity surrounding Kenya. If you were to stand outside and see, or above and see, you'd see a big difference. That up in the north corner, there is South Sudan. Uganda has been fighting until 10 years ago. The war ended. East, there is Somalia. North, there is a very volatile situation between Ethiopia and Kenyan border, where Oromo Liberation Front have been operating. This is an island of peace. But what has been breaking this country to go to war, at times to start fighting amongst themselves, has been an election. Each year in Kenya, every 5 years, there has been tension. Once the date of election is announced, even when it is not announced, there is still tension. As we speak now, there is very high, temperatures coming from those who won the post in 2022 without fail. There's people who are saying, the people have become God. This is why I'm saying, does Africa need elections? It brings me to the question. China, which gives us the money that we eat and use it to buy houses and Pajeros and V8s, Range Rovers, helicopters. Does China have elections? No. Viewers, the writing is on the wall for you people to see. Africa and Africans are not yet ready for elections. Africans need to go back to a drawing board to put up rules that will be followed before they go into an elective exercise that kills people every 5 or every 4 years, depending on the constitution of each country. Africa needs to change its mindset change the idea and tolerate that after all, election comes every 5 years. But all of us live like Africans and friends and relatives in one country. Africa needs to understand that in an election, there is always a loser and a winner. We need to start writing 2 speeches when we go into the competition. Perhaps we should ask the people, electoral commissions in Africa, to seek 2 speeches from each contestant, such that if you want to contest for elections, you write the losing speech and the winning speech. If you lose, the commissioners of elections will read your speech for you, which you wrote prior to going to elections. That type of deterrent could bring about a new dispensation, and then maybe elections in Africa can be worse. Otherwise, elections in Africa are worse than disease, because disease comes once and hits you. But this one, we are told, it will be there in 2021, 2022. You prepare yourself. You don't know where you will fly. Some people even buy tickets to go away, and then they come back after the elections are over. Viewers, lastly, the country, before I got that, Democratic Republic of Congo, you saw there was no need. There's nothing that I can explain which you didn't see. Kabila did not want an election at all. And perhaps he was right, because the type of violence that has taken place in Congo is worrying. Perhaps this type of violence formed the mind of Kabila that there was no need of an election. But finally, he conceded defeat. He was defeated and organized for Mr. Tshisekedi to come to power. Congo is moving on, and we support them. Finally, the country of my origin, Uganda. Elections in Uganda are a fiasco. Elections in Uganda are gerrymandered. As a result, I want to be very candid, I will never take part in elections in Uganda until there is a leveled ground where people can accept they have been defeated, where there is level ground of campaigning, where there is level ground of constituencies, where the number of constituencies, professional representation can occur, that even the smallest tribes in Uganda can be represented. But when you have the winner takes it all, that the biggest tribe in our country is the Baganda. Therefore, how many MPs will you have from the biggest tribe? It's from the Baganda. Therefore, there is no need of even making. You need only the leader who is at the top to convince that biggest tribe that we shall work together, and that is the end of the elections. So an election of that nature in our country paralyzes our country, makes our country impossible. You can see the type of, it's only 22 years away from now, but everybody is on the edge. Dr. Besigye, the other opposition leaders, yesterday Dr. Besigye could not address a rally in Mbarara. He was beaten as tear gas, police beat up people, dispersed people. Such elections, do we need them in Africa? I conclude, therefore, that Africa does not need elections until they change the behavior and how they behave, how they operate, how their mindset is set. Democracy in Africa is a mirage. Thank you very much, viewers. This station, therefore, is for Africa, by Africa, with Africa. Charles.